Hello. Okay, so even though what I'm holding has no bearing on this video, I'm actually recording this video on my birthday, so April 22nd, which is also Earth Day. So the fact that I will be reviewing Wall-E is quite apt. I at least wanted to do something with it on Earth Day. This is obviously Tuk Tuk from Raya and the Last Dragon. I got this for a birthday present. He's so squishy. He's so cute. He's gonna go in the background because I don't have anything else to put in the background. So Tuk Tuk is background. And I have my Wall-E shirt that says "Protect Your World" on it. Or see if I can do this. Wall-E. I annoy people with that at work, or I used to when I actually worked around people. Now I'm at home working. Boy. So this video is going to be me talking about Wall-E, which came out in 2008. And of course, this is obviously the movie about the robots and the humans in space and everything like that from Pixar. I really kind of wish Wall-E had gotten a sequel, but if you subscribe to the Pixar theory, which I like the Pixar theory. If you don't know what the Pixar theory is, just Google Pixar theory and you'll get an explanation. The Super Carlin brothers have a really good explanation for that. Yeah, I'm recording this on Earth Day, April 22nd, which is my birthday. And it's actually going to end up going up, I think, about 2 weeks after that, just based on like how these get spaced out when I'm recording them. Just because of my recording schedule for things. So I am at least doing something Earth Day related on Earth Day. Yeah. The movie Wall-E, of course, is kind of explained that in the 21st century, so technically, this year, next year, throughout the 21st century, or this century, next century, Earth was governed by this business called By and Large, which is this huge mega corporation, B&L. And causing mass consumerism and covering the planet in like just dense loads and loads of trash by 2105. And so let's see, 2105, let's see, it's 2022. Yeah, that's getting closer and unfortunately looking more and more like reality at times. In an attempt to resolve the situation, they evacuated the human population from the planet on these huge ships that, were designed to, make sure everybody was still happy and healthy and taken care of in space and everything. And then they left these robots behind, these Wall-Es, big ones and small ones, that were supposed to go around and clean up all of the trash. And, turn them into little blocks of trash. And then they were supposed to, I believe, put them into incinerators and then destroy, burn them to help clean the planet, which, was not a very good idea. Yeah, if you want to know, yes, I agree that global warming is happening, climate change is happening. I believe that humans are causing irreparable damage to the earth. If you wanted to know where I stand on that, that's where I stand on that. I don't like destroying different species and different things like that. And, endangered species, and I do believe we should protect, forests and grasslands and the glaciers and everything. Yeah, if you want to know where I stand, that's where I stand. 700 years later, come 2805, we have Earth, and it is basically covered in trash. There's layers of smog everywhere, and there's doesn't look like there's any life left on Earth, except for a cockroach. And a little robot named Wall-E. I'm not doing that through the entire video. And Wall-E, which is, what does Wall-E stand for? Waste. I don't remember what the acronym is for. But it's an acronym, and I'll go over the acronyms later. And what happens is Wall-E is, of course, this robot that is supposedly the last working one on Earth. And he still goes around, he still compacts the trash and everything, but he also goes around and he collects different things that he finds interesting from humans. We see him have a Rubik's Cube and a spork, or a spoon, whichever one, and like all this other stuff that he's collected over the years. Because we don't know exactly how long he's been working on this collection, but he's been alone for a very long time, because we don't know when like Wally started to develop this interest in humans. But we also see like all these giant piles and piles and piles of just trash everywhere that are like taller than the skyscrapers. And, Wally just, he does his job, but he also collects different things. And like he has this little house thing that he lives in, that he like keeps all of his collections in. And he has he watches movies there. We see him watching a movie. I actually Googled the movie that he's watching. It's Hello, Dolly. And so he's watching it. It's a musical and everything. And like we see him trying to imitate the humans. And one of the things that we see him keep doing is whenever there's this couple on the screen and, they hold hands, Wally, of course, dreams about like finding someone that he can hold hands with, his, a girlfriend, a partner, something. And that's what he wants. And he has like this little cockroach as his pet. That is I don't want cockroaches. I don't like cockroaches, but they are admittedly one of the things that will survive the apocalypse. Cockroaches, Keith Richards, and Twinkies will survive the apocalypse. Stuff hasn't killed Keith Richards yet, she says, knock on wood. So we see a lot of that. We see him like still does his job, but he also just, likes to relax and everything, and, keep his treasures safe and everything. It's also a funny moment where he's like pulls up like a box that has like a diamond ring inside of it, and he's like pops out the ring and he just like does not care for the ring, just wants the box, and it's adorable. And then one day a spaceship lands. And Wally has no idea what the heck this thing is. It lands, and he ends up, out of the spaceship comes this other little, very advanced probe robot named Eva. Which is, environmental, something. It's like environmental something evaluator or something like that. And like, of course, Eve's job is, of course, to fly all over the, certain areas of the planet within her general area. And she's supposed to scan and try to see if there's any remnants of, vegetation. Shows the extraterrestrial vegetation evaluator or something like that. And she's supposed to fly around and like scan and like see if she can find, any vegetation on Earth to prove that Earth is getting healthier. And of course, as she's flying around, Wally, of course, sees her. And, of course, she's the first, like, other living thing besides the cockroach that Wally has probably seen in either 700 years or somewhere close to that time frame, since he kind of started to become more self-aware. And he, like, follows her around, and he, of course, starts to develop this big crush on her, and it's adorable. And, he ends up introducing himself to her, and, there's, trying to figure out, say each other's names. Wally, Eva, all of that adorable stuff that I just love. I love for like the first, I think it's like, I don't remember for the first 20 minutes or so of the movie, but for the first section of the movie, the main interaction we get, we see like the ads in the background for like By and Large and everything like that, and like the ads for like the Axiom. But the main interaction that we get is, of course, these two robots, which is just adorable. And I love Eve and I love Wally. They're adorable and I love them. And, what we see happen is, of course, Wally starts showing Eve around, and like they're becoming friends and everything. And he's like showing her around, and he like shows her his, all of his like little treasures and everything like that. And starts to, kind of just show her all of these things that he's collected over the years, interesting things. And one of the things, of course, is his newest acquisition is a little plant that he found that he put into like a boot with soil in it. So that way the boot would be safe and the plant would be, in the soil. And of course, Eve scans the plant, and this triggers her, her programming, and she like, puts the plant inside of her, and then she just kind of goes into like sleep mode. And, Wally is very concerned about this because he wants to make sure that she's okay and everything. And, you know, what ends up happening is Wally, you know, during the time frame that like Eve's kind of asleep, he like, you know, takes care of her, you know, he kind of takes her on like dates and everything like that. And like her system is designed to like record what's going on around her, of course. And you know, so he's like taking her on different dates, and he keeps trying to like want to hold her hand, because for him that's like that's part of like what a relationship is like being able to like hold someone's hand. And so it's a very innocent way of looking at a relationship, which I really like. I'm assuming it's a very good thing that like maybe Wally didn't find like, I don't know, an old version of say, you know, 50 Shades of Grey lying around. You know, maybe that would be a very bad thing if he'd found that one instead of Hello Dolly. Admittedly, at the time frame that the movie is being made, 50 Shades of Grey was possibly only a book at the time, but that would have been hilarious. And not something Disney would want to do. But what we, of course, see is that, you know, eventually the spaceship returns for Eve, and like it takes her, and like Wally ends up climbing onto the spaceship and like is hanging onto the outside of the spaceship as it like launches back into the atmosphere. And you know, he's like trying to get in, and like there's a one point where she's like, he like gets up to like where he can like look in the window. I don't know why there's a window on a spaceship that only has robots on it, but because it's like they're all in like sleep mode at the time. But he like looks in the window and like he sees Eve, and he's just like, Eve, like trying to get her attention, like look outside type of thing, which is adorable. And you know, so we see like the space travel, of course, you know, the ship sailing back, flying back through the sky, you know, through space to get back to the Axiom, which is this big, you know, cruise liner type spaceship. And you know, it's basically all of the humans basically just sit in these, you know, space chairs the whole day that like you know, drives them around and everything and does everything for them. And you know, the robots take care of everything else. And you know, so Wally starts interacting with all these different robots, and he keeps causing problems, which is just hilarious watching as like all the robots are like their programming is being disrupted by Wally. And you know, so we get that moment, which is just adorable. And what else ends up happening is you know, Eve gets scanned, and she's the one that has this, you know, this vegetable plant. It's a vegetation plant inside of her, and so she's supposed to be taken to the captain. And you know, Wally ends up like kind of chasing her through the ship, trying to get near her. And during this whole time frame, he ends up interacting with two people on the ship. One is John, who is just this guy that Wally accidentally knocks out of his reclining space chair. Because the way that the Axiom was set up along with all these other ships was that the humans would leave Earth for about 5 years, and then, you know, after 5 years, they would come back because all the robots would have cleaned up the planet. But obviously that didn't happen, because 700 years later, you know, they're still on the ship. And they've become a lot lazier, because we see like in the advertisements for the Axiom and such that it's like, oh, you know, they're still, you know, up and moving and everything like that, and they still look like we do. But then, you know, by the time like 700 years have passed, and the 700 years in space, and as it's explained later on, you know, 700 years in space with like low gravity does result in, you know, loss of bone density and bone loss, which of course, you know, is just proven even today for like people that are up on the International Space Station, that like, you know, for like some of the ones that have like were in space for like a year, or, you know, almost a year or something like that, that it does affect your body, because, you know, you're up in space, so you have less gravity weighing down on you, but, you know, it also just affects you in general. So that, you know, times that by, you know, 700 years and several generations down the line, you know, it's going to have affected people quite a bit. I mean, like, they're still kind of healthy and everything, and the fact that they're still able to live just fine, and they probably have access to very good medical expertise on the ship by the different robots. But, you know, everything is done robotically by now. Like, they went from, like, in the ads, it's like people actually being up and like being able to like walk around and everything, to now it's literally the robots that do everything for them, and they just basically control it with like their computer screens and everything. So gee, I wonder what that's like. And what ends up happening is Wally meets John, and, you know, help, Wally accidentally knock him out of a chair, then get him back in the chair. And then he ends up meeting Mary, who is this other woman that he ends up meeting that, like, he kind of like, everybody is just so engrossed in like their screens on their chairs and everything. And like, their smoothies that they drink all the time. They're like, so just, ingrained in that, she gets kind of knocked out of it, and she kind of like ends up looking around more at where she is and like at Wally, and, kind of, helps him get to Eve. And, so she starts paying a lot more attention to what's going on. And she ends up, after like Wally goes off to where he's supposed to, following Eve, she looks around and she's like at the pool deck, and she's like, I didn't know we had a pool. And I'm assuming she goes play in the pool, because we see her later. I'd be like, if I was in a spaceship that had a pool in it, I'd be in that pool so often, because I love swimming. I mean, there's certain things. I mean, like, I think it's the Super Carlin brothers that have said, it's like you're on the ship and you're being pampered to death, but are you really living in that case? And, what happens is they get to the captain, Eve is taken into the captain's quarters, and of course we're introduced to him and the autopilot named Otto, who is a reference to Hal from, I was supposed to say 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but that's wrong. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Very different movies. No, very different movies. And what happens is, we're introduced to the captain, and he, has just, he does very little. He leaves most of the control of the ship. The only thing that he really gets to do is like these daily announcements and everything. And what ends up happening is, he looks over Eve, and like he finds out, oh, she's, something starting that's supposed to help us be able to go back to Earth. And, he gets this manual out, via different things that happen, of course, in the bridge. He gets the manual out, and he starts trying to look over, what he's supposed to do. And it's basically you take the plant from, take the plant, and you're supposed to put it inside of this, I guess, certain scanner somewhere on the deck. Why the scanner wouldn't be inside of, like, just the captain's office, I don't know. Why the scanner wouldn't be there, but I guess like if it's in like the middle of the ship, then everybody kind of watch as like they put the plant in the scanner, I guess, would be like that idea of it. And what ends up happening is Wally has like followed Eve into there, like she sees him and she's just like, oh, Wally, you're not supposed to be here type moments. So she's just like, no. She's like trying to get Wally to like calm down and everything. Well, she's like, giving him the plant, and like we meet all these other robots. There's Marva and Go 4 and like all these other different robots that we end up interacting with. And they all have like different acronyms and everything, and I didn't memorize all the acronyms. Maybe that'll be like a side video I do at some point. I would just like break down all the acronyms from Wally. Maybe I'll do that as a side video. Just like random other side video. I broke down the acronyms from Wally, and here's what they all mean. That would be a lot of editing, but we'll see. But what ends up happening is, they look inside for the plant, and the plant is gone. And, they're just like, oh, well, I guess it must have been a false alarm. Send Eve to, go for maintenance or whatever. And, Eve gets, and sends Wally to be cleaned. And, like, Wally, like, shakes the captain's hand at one point and, like, leaves some, like, soil deposit on the captain's hand. And he ends up, analyzing it. It's like, this is soil. And, like, gets a whole... The captain starts going down the rabbit hole of like seeing all of this information about Earth and everything else, and he's just like looking over it and like is just like fascinated with it, which is fun. And like Eve and Wally are like taken down to like where they're supposed, maintenance area and everything. And through the glass, because Wally is like on one side of the glass and Eve's on the other, he's like watching it, and it looks like her. Because she, like, her arms can be detached and her head floats, so she can, like, easily be moved around and, have maintenance done on her. But, like, to Wally's eyes on the other side of the glass, it looks like they cut off her arm, and it looks like they're going to cut off her head. And he's just like, no! And he, like, gets inside and, like, frees her and, like, starts, like, this kind of robot mutiny on the ship. So, like, they're all running all over the place. All the robots are causing chaos and everything. Because there's lots of these different, like, malfunctioning robots. There's, like a hairstylist robot and, like, a makeup robot that, like, just keeps causing problems. There's like a massage robot that just like starts beating everything up. Different robots that are like they're just on the fritz. And Eve or Wally kind of ends up setting a bunch of them loose on the ship. And Eve and Wally get put as, caution, these robots are dangerous, robots on the run and everything. So it's like they're having that issue. They're rogue robots. And, what happens is Eve tries to get Wally to like one of the escape pods. And when they get to the escape pod, they end up seeing that, one of the little robots from before that had been like the one that initially brought Eve to the captain's office actually has the plant and like was trying to put it onto the ship and like send the plant back to Earth. And Wally ends up on the ship and he ends up saving the little plant. And, Eve comes out and like this is where we have like the adorable moment in the movie where Eve and Wally are kind of quote unquote dancing in space because like Wally got his hands on a fire extinguisher, so he just like flying through space with Eve and everything all around the ship and everything, and like there's like music playing in the background. Admittedly, in space there's not actually noise in space, but for the purposes of it makes it adorable, so we have adorable music. And like the captain is like still talking to the ship and like he's like define dancing, and it's like dancing is like this two people dancing in a rhythm set to music or something like that. And he's just like very, entranced by that. And like, so Eve and Wally are like flying around the outside of the ship. And Mary and John end up meeting because Mary like has like kind of like gone out of like paying attention to whatever her screen is trying to show her. And she's like looking out the window and like seeing space and everything. And she like stops John and like he like looks and he's like, wait, I know that guy, his name's Wally, like is like just talking. I love that. And they're just adorable. And like they start being they start getting along. And what ends up happening is Eve and Wally end up sneaking back onto the ship because Eve's her designation, her purpose is to, of course, find this vegetation and give it to the captain so that way they can, put it in the scanner and then send the ship back to Earth. And, directive. That was the word I was looking for, her directive. And, of course, they get back onto the ship. Well, Eve and Wally get back onto the ship, and Eve is, trying to take the plant up to the captain. And, Wally just keeps trying to, like, hold her hand. Like, he keeps reaching out to try to, like, hold her hand. And she just, like, keeps... Not that she's intentionally trying to stop him. It's just, like, things keep happening that, like, prevent her from being able to hold his hand. And at one point, I think it's when they're in space, they kind of end up, like... They kind of, their heads kind of, like, touch together. And there's, like, this little shock that goes between them. And it's, like, that's their kind of first, quote-unquote kiss. With an electric spark and everything. And, Eve kind of leaves Wally by the pool at the moment. And, like, we see John and Mary, like, just kind of playing in the pool and everything, like, throwing water at the, like, the robot that tries to tell them to leave. And I'm looking at there and going, like, you have a robot by a pool and the robot is not waterproof. That is not a good design. That is a very bad design flaw on the person that designed that robot. I know I'm not the first one that thought about that. But what ends up happening is, of course, Eve made her way up to the captain's quarters and, she, got the plant and she's trying to give the captain the plant. And what ends up happening is he, like, looks over her, like, memories and everything like that to kind of see what Earth looks like now. And it's just covered in nothing but, trash and horrible other stuff. And, he just like, but if that's the way the Earth looks now, it doesn't look anything like any of this, information that I have. And, is it really worth going back and everything? And he's just like, we see him kind of get, kind of sad about that. And he looks over the plant and it's like, the plant's kind of getting a little droopy. So he's just like, well, he gives it some water and it like perks back up. And he's just like, you're okay. You just need someone to help take care of you. And, that's what it's like, he looks again back at, the dirty, the trash covered Earth. And he's just like, well, why can't I do that? Why can't humans go and like take care of the planet that was our home for, thousands and thousands of years? Why can't we do that? And so that's, he decides like, yes, we're still going to go back to Earth. So they need the plant to scan it and everything. And what ends up happening is, the autopilot comes in and tries to like take the plant away from him, and the captain like tells the autopilot, "Tell me why you keep doing this, why we can't go back to Earth." And the autopilot reveals that they received a transmission from Earth like 700 years ago or whatever the case was, that was the guy that was in charge of By and Large, saying that the Earth is like done. There's nothing else we can do. We thought we could fix it. We were wrong. Just override any directive about trying to go back to Earth. Try to stop the humans from going back to Earth. Whatever the case may be, you can't come back here. And so it's just, this is where we get the Otto is kind of turning into Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I still have not seen. I need to watch that at some point. But what ends up happening is, of course, this is where we have, where Otto and the captain start fighting. And, the plant almost gets lost, but Wally finds the plant, and then Eve and Wally kind of go on the run through the ship, and the captain ends up kind of getting locked in his quarters, and he's, they're being, Wally kind of ends up getting a little bit hurt because they end up getting thrown into like the trash compactor area, and Eve and Wally are trying to escape, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in that way. And like Wally gets very badly damaged because like Otto had kind of like electrocuted him, and Wally gets like kind of fried, so they need to get replacement parts for Wally, but there's nothing on the ship that is compatible with Wally. There's these like giant versions of Wally, but their parts aren't compatible with him. And Wally, kind of like Eve is like more worried about Wally than she is about the plant, and like Wally like makes her focus on the plant because Wally understands that going back to Earth means that that's where all of his spare parts are, because like over the years he's like gathered up spare parts from the other Wally robots that are on Earth that are like within his vicinity, because we see him like replace his like tire treads and stuff like that. At the beginning of the movie, and like at one point you have to like replace one of his eyes and everything. And like he basically kind of like does the explanation of if we go back to Earth, then that's where all of my spare parts are. So it's a win-win situation. It's your directive that you're supposed to give this to the captain and get us back get the ship back to Earth, and that's where all of my stuff is. So of course that's where Eve is just like, okay, this is what we're doing, and she has a gun, and I love her. And I made the comparison that Eve and Wally remind me very much of Dr. 11, Matt Smith's doctor in River Song, because she is badass, awesome space woman with gun, and he is dork who is fascinated by humans and is somewhat scared yet attracted to the woman with the gun. And I'm like, I highly doubt I am the first person to make that observation, but I made that observation when I was watching the movie, and I'm just like, yeah, I can see that. And just that whole thing. And what ends up happening is Eve and Wally are, of course, kind of making their way through the ship, and they get like all these other robots on their side to help them. They release all the different malfunctioning robots to cause like chaos and everything, but they're also trying to like help Wally and help Eve and everything. And like the captain kind of sees that they're on the run, and the captain comes with a brilliant idea of how to like trick the autopilot. He like takes one of the pictures of like the kind of images that like Eve had of Wally and like the plant, and he like adjusts the picture so it looks like he's holding the plant to like trick Otto into like thinking that he has the plant. And Otto falls for it because the computer apparently can't tell the difference between that and a picture, but Otto falls for it. And the captain like distracts Otto. And he kind of like had like interrupted the like transmissions all over the ship to like say, okay, it's Eve and Wally, you need to get the plant to the hollow director, to the thing that will scan it and everything, and then that will put all of that'll send the ship back to Earth and everything. And so everybody's like started getting to like gathered like within the deck where like the scanner is. And everybody, like, they have like they're all just like getting like all thrown over the place because like the ship keeps tilting because like the captain and Otto are trying to like fight with each other and everything, and the captain ends up eventually turning Otto off after this like monumental moment with like the amazing space music, the triumphant music of like him standing up for like the first time, I guess, in a long freaking time, and he like stands up and like stops Otto, and it's just like the moment of like I don't want to survive, I want to live. um I don't just want to survive out here in space where all we do is sit and we don't pay any attention to what's going on around us. I want to live. I want to see Earth. I want to experience all these different things. And I want to help fix Earth and everything. So it's like we see that. And that's like that driving force. And like we see everybody on the ship kind of watching what happens. And like we see Mary and John there. And, everybody on the ship is watching as like Eve and Wally get down to like the holo director or the holo whatever scanner thing, and the ship is actually, or the scanner is actually closing at one point because Otto is trying to like stop what's happening, and Wally ends up like stuck underneath the scanner trying to keep it open, so he's kind of getting squished at the moment. And Eve manages to the planet gets separated from like them, and like via everybody on the ship, a bunch of people on the ship like working together to get the plant back to Eve to put it into the scanner. That activates the ship, and they hyperdrive back to Earth. And as soon as they get to Earth, Eve literally like grabs Wally, and who's like in like a really bad shape, and like flies him back to like his little home on the ship, and starts, getting all of his different parts. And like, we see her just moving as like freaking lightning fast as she can. And like, she's like fixing all of his different parts and replacing them, and like, putting in new pieces and everything that he needs to like make him work properly again. And, charge him up and everything. And like all the other, like everybody on the ship is like coming out, and like, they're just like kind of watching, they're like worried about Wally. And the captain and John and Mary in particular are very worried about Wally, and like the robots that had been on the ship that like had helped Wally and Eve are just kind of they're very worried about Wally as well. And what ends up happening is, of course, Wally wakes up, but he's back to his original programming. He is back to this just his directive of, squish the trash, move on, squish the trash, move on, squish the trash. Not what he'd already kind of like developed into, and like developed his own personality and his own, life. And he like, Eve is like very distraught by this at first, and she like is like showing him the different, the treasures that like he showed her before, and like playing the music and like the musical and everything, and like just trying to get him to snap out of it, to go back to like who he was, to like remember who he is, who she is, and everything, like what just happened. And what ends up happening is she starts the music, because like he has like the ability to like record music on him, so like she like plays that music, and she ends up like holding his hand, the way that he kept wanting to hold her hand, like they hold hands. And she kind of, quote unquote, kisses him again, and the fact that there's like, their foreheads touch again. And like there's a spark, and that, Eve is ready to like pull away, and like Wally's hand like tightens on hers so she can't pull away. And it's him remembering, and he remembers who she is and what everything happened and everything. So it's just like, they're super happy, and like, they're all perfectly fine. Not perfectly fine, but they're better than fine now, because now they actually get to be together. And the robots are happy because Wally's okay. And then they have Wally is or the captain and everybody start like replanting the plant and like give it water and everything. Like he's going to start teaching everyone about him and the ship are going to work on like teaching everyone about how to fix Earth. And like as we pull out and pull back into space, we see that all of these all these different like little sprouts are starting to sprout up all over the place, and starting to show that Earth can sustain life. And, and it is kind of this thing that, life will continue, that, yeah, life is going to continue no matter what happens. Earth bounced back after what happened with, the dinosaurs, and it'll continue to do that. And, like, yeah, humans are going to cause a lot of freaking damage to the planet. I really wish we wouldn't, but we will, and we are. But eventually, Earth will either get us back or just fight its way back after we're gone. One of the two. One of the two. And like we do kind of get this like the end credits are just, or the credits are just, humans like rediscovering things, rebuilding their society, fixing Earth and everything. And, like there's this huge tree that grows that's based off, that's like growing out of the boot that had the plant in it and everything. And like Eve and Wally are there to like see all of this. And so I really like how they do that. And then we have, for cast, we have Ben Burt, who is Wally, which of course stands for Waste Allocation Load Lifter, Earth Class, Wally. And the same thing with Eva. She is voiced by Alyssa Knight, and that stands for Extraterrestrial Vegetation Evaluator. And all the different people that voice like the different robots, they basically had like their voice go through a filter system. They would do the lines so that way they could get the correct emotion into the lines and everything, and then they would put that through like a distortion thing to just like make their voice go from Eva to Eva, Wally, instead of having to have the person do that again and again and again. They just do the lines and then they can adjust them, kind of like, which is actually just techniques that they've been using at the Walt Disney Company for a very long time, to make different sound effects and different, voice modulations and everything like that. We have Jeff Garlin as Captain B. McCrea, who is, of course, the commander of the ship. We have Fred Willard as Shelby Forthright, who is the history CEO of By and Large Corporation. So he's like kind of the one main human that's actually a human in the movie that we see. We have John Ratzenberger as John, and Kathy Najimy as Mary. So obligatory John Ratzenberger character in the movie. And then we have Sigourney Weaver as the voice of the Axios computer, and she's not Otto. Otto is a male voice, and I don't think I wrote down who does Otto, but Sigourney Weaver is the voice of like the ship that just like talks to everybody, like does the announcements or different things like that. And it's just like funny thing of like because she's an alien and everything, so that's just funny. And there is, there are, on the DVD, there are two Pixar shorts. One of them is called Bernie, and it's about this little robot who's like trying to fix things on the ship at the same time that like everything's happening with like Wally and Eve and everything like that, and he just has like a horrible time. And then, what was the other one? What was the other short that was on this DVD? I do not remember what the other short was off the top of my head. Apparently it didn't resonate with me that much, or at least not as much as I can remember what it was. But there was another short on it, but I just don't remember what it was. Obviously, Wally has this big overarching theme of like environmentalism and everything like that, which is not surprising given, what the movie shows. And that was 2005. This is 2022. That's 17 years later. Well, the movie came out in 2008, and this is 22, so it's it's not quite 17 years later. It's 14 years later, but still, see what happens. What else is going to happen? So it's this theory that humans started to like repopulate Earth and started to fix things, and maybe other ships like return to Earth or something like that. Like maybe the different ships were able to communicate with each other, because there were more than one ship. There was more than one Axios type ship that like left. But there's not really that much else. As I said, I wouldn't mind if they did like a Wall-E sequel, but I would say that time has passed. But Incredibles too. Um, yeah. So that's what we have for Wall-E. My Wall-E shirt. I was like so happy when I got to wear this. It was like, it's Wall-E. It's so cute. I didn't really have anything else to use for props in the background. We don't really have any boots that would have worked, and I have a globe, but it's not a very obviously globe looking thing. That would have been nice, but that's what we have for Wall-E and just my opinions on Wall-E. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the movie. And if you haven't watched Wall-E for a while, go watch it. It's just kind of one of those fun things where it's just like, well, I haven't watched this for a while. Because some of the movies, like Ratatouille, my dad and I hadn't watched for a while, and Wall-E we haven't watched for a little while. So it is nice to go through and just watch the Pixar movies again and just kind of be like, yeah, it's been a while since we've watched these. Same thing with the Disney movies. So I thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you have a nice rest of your day. And since I'm recording this on Earth Day, I hope that you had a happy Earth Day. And I just, be nice to the Earth because it's the only one we have. Bye. After 700 years of doing what he was built for, he'll discover what he was meant for.